Good evening. I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Board of Finance on Wednesday, March 6, 2019. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I think we have two deliverables tonight. We need to come to an agreement on a product to send to the public hearing, and we need to establish the date of the public hearing. I'd like to make a recommendation as to how to go forward. I think what I'd like to do, and hopefully you all will agree, is we will take the final product from our deliberations of last night, and we will send that to the public hearing for discussion. And that's it. Any thoughts?
I support that decision. I think we worked hard to come up with that type of reduction. We examined all the detail laboriously. And I think that at this time, it's should be presented to the town.
I would concur with that.
Any more discussion?
So if I understand you, are you saying that as it stands now, this is what you want to vote on to send it to the public hearing?
Yes. This would be the product that came out of the discussion so far. We'd send it to the public hearing for purposes of getting further input from the public.
We have the numbers.
Yeah. Exactly. Bob, this kind of, I think we're going to need your help.
Yep.
The Board of I'll go through it, or do you want to go through it?
No, you can.
All right, the Board of Selectmen presented a recommended total budget of $78,644,616. We made cuts last night of $98,500. The net result is a total budget of $78,546,116. Bob, can you tell us what's that as a percentage and percentage spending increase? And then
So at 78,546,116, it's a 5.216 spending increase.
okay, and what is the mill rate increase? What is the projected mill rate increase?
Projected estimated mill rate would be 33.69, 33.69. So that's a 0.82 increase, or 2.49% increase in the mill rate.
So we're still above 5% at 5.216.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I appreciate your recommendation. I don't feel comfortable with it over 5%. That doesn't mean that, you shouldn't sally forth. I'm not on board with the over 5%. I just think it's going to, we're gonna go to the public hearing, and people are gonna do what they do at the public hearing. So it's almost like, it seems in a way like we're using the public hearing as a focus group, when really it is good to get input, but it seems like we're not, I don't feel that we're presenting the best, how do I say it, the best proportion or percentage of increase that sounds reasonable, my opinion. But again, I appreciate your recommendation.
I don't want to go line through line, I don't think that that's appropriate, but I would agree with Cynthia that we should do everything in our power, going to the public. Meeting, trying to keep it under 5%. I just think that, it's going to be a tough sell at 5%. I don't even know if at the public meeting, you're going to get a true representation of, where the town's going to be at. I just think based on history, I can't remember the Bethel budget over 5% in recent history that's passed. And that's what people are going to look at. They're going to see 5%, and them, they're just gonna say, wow, 5%, they're not gonna look at debt service, they're not gonna look at, you know, what they agreed to do. We all have short memories. So I think anything we do to get under 5% is gonna be helpful at a public meeting.
Except for Matt, he has a long memory. You have a long memory. Do you remember, it ever being under 5% in the past,
You mean over 5%?
over 5%? And
2010.
it's the first time,
2010,
2010?
yeah.
8 years.
I think a way to approach this is, yes, showing that it's a 5.21% spending increase, but I think you need to wrap it around the fact that it's only a 2.49% increase in the mill rate. So I think we need to, so there's not a comparable, my mill rate's not going up 5%, my mill rate's going up 2.5% because of this added revenue, which offsets some of these increased expenses. And I think that's something that we need, I'm not sure everybody gets that, okay? And I think that's something that also needs to be discussed.
I think Claudia raises a good point with that. Because the true impact is offset, the impact of the increase. So, you know, when they have to talk about selling it, but it's like, you know, yes, we've had this increase substantially because of the debt, that y'all voted on, no. And then, you know, but we were lucky that we had this growth in the grand list, that we were able to offset it, so the impact is not as,
Severe.
yeah.
What is the revenue number that we're using as the offset?
Altogether, between the increase in the grand list and the projected increases in the revenue by departments or education dollars that we're supposed to get, about $2 million.
2 million additional?
2 million.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Bob, could you also give us an estimated increase of the tax impact on the median household value?
Yeah, it's $178 right now.
Per year.
177.96. And I can mention too that if you didn't have the debt increase, if debt was at 4 million as opposed to 5.3, the increase would be about a half a point. So debt relates to about 2%.
A half a mill rate point, or wait, half a percentage?
Half a percent
Half a
increase.
percent.
So it'd only be a half percentage increase, overall in
You've got
taxes,
2.49 right now.
spending.
2% of that is debt service.
And I think that needs to be pointed out as well. I think people need to have an understanding of that too. The impact of, you know, I'm not sure everybody's got that impact. I think that also needs to be brought up.
And the fact that we are doing everything we could possibly do to reduce debt over the now and the next coming year, or, you know, coming years. And we've already made a dent in the debt with last year, so. And we're not adding.
I agree, Wendy.
Yeah.
And if 2%, you know, is due to debt load, you know, the priority of this group needs to somehow manage that debt. And I think that's what we're at least attempting to do with this budget.
But it will get worse because you're gonna have the schools coming into play.
Yeah.
So the expectations for the taxpayers and education of the taxpayers has to be, this is gonna continue. This is not the kind of thing where the debt service is going away, it's actually going up. And so unless we, you know, get used to, you know, maybe paying a little more for the debt service, we're not gonna be able to provide the other services that you're accustomed to. I mean, that's the trade-off, right?
Well, and just for a point, last night I had talked about a 0.5% at 0.005, and there was some argument that 0.005 wasn't 0.5%, which I'm pretty sure 0.005 is 0.5%. 0.05 is 5%. 0.005 is 0.5%.
Yeah, actually, you said 0.005%.
What I meant 0.005.
Right.
Yeah. So let me ask a question. If we reduced the accounts by 0.0025, so 0.25%, and we excluded those accounts that we can't touch. Employee benefits, we can't touch insurance, we can't touch, what were the other ones?
So you're looking at somewhere around 125,000?
That's what the savings would be roughly?
No, I'm saying about 125, because maybe half a point would be about 300,000. All right, I mean 150. 165 gets you under 4, it's like 4.998 or something like that. So that's gonna be right around 5.001 or 2, if you're at 150, or 1/4%.
Alright. And if we took 150 off of where we stand right now, what would the total percent increase be in the budget?
I'll give you
So take an additional 150 out.
Whatever it comes out, I don't have, I can't give you the exact number, because there's certain accounts that we can't touch.
No, but you're saying if we take an additional 150,000 out of the budget.
Whatever it is,
would-
point.
So the total increase is 5.015, and the mill rate increase is 0.74, or 2.27, so it goes from 2.49 to 2.27.
And I'm sorry, Bob, that's at a kind of pro rata spread across all accounts at .0025.
Well, I'm just using 150,000 as a rough estimate of those accounts.
But that's, I understand the roughness, but that was the assumption.
So so roughly we'd be looking at about 150,000 additional savings, because we figured 300,000. It was 380 if you totaled them all, but we had to back out almost $8 million that we can't touch. So I guess my question to the board would be, is it something you want to entertain tonight? Or do you want to wait to see what happens at the public hearing?
I'm not comfortable with reducing the accounts, even by the 1/4%, not right now. I think it's a, I don't wanna say slippery slope, or, I think it sets us up for next year, them having to make up, or is, I honestly, Brian, like, is your ultimate goal to see each one of these accounts, instead of having growth and providing our regular level of services, that you're preferring to see all these accounts be reduced? Is that your ultimate goal?
No, I'm just going based, we generally do budgeting based on past, right, occurrences. I mean, it's pretty hard to move forward without looking at a history. So if in the past 10 years, one budget has passed over 5%, and how many budgets have gone down under 5%, I'm trying to give it the best chance to minimize damage. And you risk upsetting people. Perception is reality. And when people see a 5.25% increase in spending, they are not listening to the message. They're seeing a 5.25% increase.
I understand that part. I'm trying to ask you what
Well, I don't.
your
I think-
impact to the actual department budgets.
So by reducing on an $850,000 budget, to reduce it by 1/4% would come out to roughly under $2,500 is what you're taking from that account. So if you look at what we took from the senior center, which, how big was their budget? We took $20,000 from them. You can speak, Matt, just spit it out.
When you're done.
I'm done. Say what you want to say.
Well, I want to state something for the record, and I did speak with Mr. Manfred about it earlier. Just as long as you brought up the senior center, we need to correct that later, whenever we do this, because I missed part of that discussion last night because I was working on the spreadsheet with Bob and I can't hear very well down at the other end. But the Board of Selectmen already took 20,000 out, so by taking another 20, that budget drops below the prior year. And in a growing program, we gotta give them some relief. But I'm not asking to deal with it tonight. I will come up with a recommendation for you. Just wanted to make you aware of that.
To Wendy's point, some of the departments, there's growth, and that's what's the increase, but, I don't necessarily consider increased spending as growth. So I can't really, across the board, say it's growth that's causing the increase, so I just wanted to clarify
I
that.
understand.
Yeah.
But, counter to that, some of the increased spending is for managing the new police department, additional costs because of that. So it's because of growth that some of the departments have had to increase their budget.
I think
So,
that's what I said.
that's why I say it's contrary to, the growth has caused an increased requirement on us.
And that's fine, I was saying the reverse, that increased spending does not necessarily demonstrate growth. What you're saying is what I
It's a
thought I was
consequence.
trying to say to Wendy, is that it can be a consequence, but all the more reason to restrain spending in whatever areas one can.
Hey, Bob, of the 5.216% increase, what percentage is the additional debt, or what percentage is the debt service?
Of the increase that we
It's 34. I'll get it.
You said two
Debt
point four
services,
nine?
of the 5.216?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so, debt service went up 32.49 or 32.5%. So, that's what's 1.3.
So it's 1.
That's the increase in dollars.
So 1.3%.
So you take the one
Increase in
three,
debt service.
1.3, yeah.
What percent, million?
So what's the percent increase
Let me see.
in spending on debt service?
Maybe just to fill the air for the meeting, if we look to the Board of Selectmen's pitch page, granted, this was based on 5.35, so a little bit higher. Debt service was 1.71 of the 5.35.
It's 33% of the increase is the debt service.
Mhm. I mean, this lists what the increase is.
So if it's a third of the debt service, then
450 is 1.81, debt service was 1.71, wages 0.51.
So a third of the increase is the debt service.
So you're gonna have 1.74 just for debt service added, the 5.216.
okay, and okay, this is good. So 1.74 debt service. What are the salary and wage increases? What's the percentage for that? The fixed costs that we don't have any control over?
I would guess it's probably, on our side, the town side, it's probably around $11 million. You mean in the adjustments?
Yeah, I'm talking about, like, if we can look at this 5.216 spending number and dissect it to say 1.74% is debt service, we don't have control over that. We have to pay that. There are fixed costs like salary increases, negotiated salary increases, and employee benefits and things that we don't have control over. That's 3%.
You're gonna be looking at all the little accounts, dues, mileage, office expense. And I just looked at Matt's, all right? If you took 0.25% out of his, it's $17.
Right, no, I guess my question is, of the 5.216%, what percent of that is discretionary spending? Like, we could choose not to spend it.
She's saying, like, for instance, in the education budget, like 85% is salary. She wants to
Right.
know for the whole budget, what part of the increase, what percentage?
And that's in what
I
is
don't think I can do that right now.
Okay, that,
And that would be a good thing to show at our town meeting, to show everybody, here's the breakdown of how we, how we get to it.
There are, I believe, but for debt service, employee benefits,
Insurance and wages.
insurance, wages, some level of minimum funding for the Board of Ed, whatever the state statute is, but I think that's relatively, it's not gonna be a restriction to us. Those are the only items that have no discretion.
right.
So I'd like to know what, of the 5.216, what is actually a discretionary spending increase versus it's just money we have to spend as a town because we've committed it already.
I mean, that's something that I can get for the public hearing, but I can't do it now.
Yeah,
I mean, that
think
number's
it's a
gonna
great
be
idea.
relatively small, it's not a
Very
big number.
small.
Right. It's very
Especially as a
small.
town.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when we say the town will never accept a 5% increase, like, we really have to help people understand what that 5% increase is. Because if it's a 1.2% discretionary increase, right? Are we really gonna cut 1.2% and not have the services we're accustomed to? Those are the choices and trade-offs, right?
I might be able to help answer that, because I had done a spreadsheet for a PowerPoint presentation based on information that Bob gave me last week. And I calculated all the non-discretionary items. And they came, so, you know, insurance, debt, contracts, you know, the stuff that utilities, and that came to about 10.5 million. So you have to figure that whatever we arrive at for a town number, take 10.5 million off, and that's all that's left that we have to work with. And we've already taken, what, 450,000 out of that. It's very, very lean. So that's I don't think people really, unless they're numbers junkies, I don't think they really know how much of that non-discretionary stuff is in that budget.
I agree with Delene in the sense of, I think it's much more visual in your mind to know what the percentages are.
Sure.
Like what she just asked I think it's a really good question.
Oh,
Because
okay.
you can say, this much is due to this much is due to this, can't touch it. That's like 3.7%, whatever it's gonna be. And then, you know, then you can use that other, and I'm not even like really on board with the whole 5% thing. But then you could use the remainder, you say, this is what it's actually, we have control over, and this is what it might be like 1.5%, who knows? Is that what you're getting at?
That's okay,
Yeah.
right. And if I wasn't sitting at this table, I would have no idea of this conversation, right? And I'm a fairly educated
Well, you don't
and
have to
concerned
touch
taxpayer. Yes.
Okay, to your question, I just did use the calculator on my phone. That part that we were just talking about, the 10.5 million, is 32.7% of the town budget. So if we settle, let's just for argument's sake, what we ended up with last night, what will appear on the ballot, or not on the ballot for town, you know, because there's two lines on the ballot, 32,080,000 roughly. Take 32.7 off, and that's the part that they can't get touched. So any cuts have to come out of other stuff from that point on.
So,
If I might, I want to make one other comment to Cynthia's question, which I think is a good one. You know, when did this happen before? I was thinking about that. In 2010, following the big recession, we had a huge drop in our pension funds. And that required, in order to keep, and they had not been fully funded for a while anyway. So because the values of the pensions dropped so far, we had, you know, without getting into a discourse about that, when the value drops, the ARC, the contribution the town has to make has to go up to fill in the gap. So we had to move up the pension contribution by 16%, and that's what put the overall budget over 5. And it was 2010. I mean, the recession was not even beginning to be over, and everybody said that'll never pass. But it required a lot of communication to explain to people, and it did pass on the first try. So I can't predict that that's going to happen again, but there is an opportunity if you communicate what's going on and you're totally transparent with it. I think it can be done. My opinion.
But it's so simple the way that, I'm just pushing that because it's so simple the way that you put it, to try to communicate that to people. And
Yep.
you're saying 10,000 here, 3
Yep.
million there, but if we can get that number, that percent, I think it would be very helpful.
You mean the 32.7?
Right, what percent is that of the fixed, a non-discretionary? What percent is that? Because we said that 1.74 is debt service, 1.7%.
Yeah.
If we could get the percentage that the non-discretionary comprises, then maybe that would bring it up, I don't know, to 4%. Then you would just be talking to people about a 1-point-something%
Yeah.
increase.
Yeah,
See, I'm giving you the case of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And I'm not even
No,
gonna.
it's
You're
good.
worth
I
my
think you're exactly right.
Mhm.
It's a difficult concept to get across. If we can work together to put it together, I think, yeah, I think that that's critical to getting this. And I think you're right on the right track.
Right.
I have to see it. It has to be up there, it has to be obvious, and people have to pick up on it.
Right, I mean, I can't think of millions and millions here.
Yeah, no, like a pie
Like,
chart of costs, like you had a pie chart.
Can you just search bottom, five,
Yeah,
5.6, yeah, 4 or 5 things that add up to
Yeah.
it. Bing, there's your chart, you know?
Right.
And then I think it's easy for, easy is, I don't know if it's the right word, but we could easily say, and we have decided that that small percentage that's left for us to play with, that we've decided to fund that, or put it forth to the voters. Play with, but you know,
And then
keep
you
us
also-
going.
And if we had some examples of the things that were in that discretionary percentage to help people understand, like, I mean, it's not superfluous things, it's not like, you know, let's do luxurious, super duper
Right.
things here, like, they're basics, those are basics too. Really,
I think that people understand that part of the salary for contract, that it was because
Yeah.
of every year, so I think we're pretty clear about that, but yeah.
The pragmatist in myself says, what's the plan? What do you want
And
to
that's
do?
you figure that out. Then we'll vote.
Well, I would just like to put my thought to rest so we can move on, so I'm gonna make a motion that we cut the non-discretionary accounts, the ones that we had discussed that we can't touch. Bob, we went through these, right? We talked about pension, employee benefits, debt service, utilities, and what we do is one more that we could not.
Salaries.
So I'm making a recommendation of we reduce the total lines equally by 0.0025%.
0025 or 0025%.
0.0025, quarter percent. If you want me to say a quarter percent, I'll say a quarter percent.
Okay, well,
Okay, quarter percent,
Sorry.
0.025.
Does that go for education as well?
Across the
Is
board.
that the motion?
That's my motion.
I will, I second that.
did you mention 460?
He said, Board of Ed.
Excluding?
No, 460's.
Okay.
Stop.
Which would come out to under a $2,500 cut in 460, at quarter percent. Under, it would probably be, I would say it would be $1,250, but we can check my math.
And I'm sorry, Bob, if we were to do that, what would be the increase in spending?
Well, we gotta go back to each individual account. I just can't give a number, just.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, or maybe it's a question to you, but through the chairman. When you're talking about this motion, and you're talking about excluding certain types of accounts, the Board of Ed budget, of course, includes those types of, salaries, wages, benefits, all of those things. So does that not come out of, so are you saying you would take 0.0025 off the top of our entire budget?
Yes.
But everybody else can exclude all those non-discretionary things, but we can't? I
Wait a
don't
minute.
think that's appropriate.
When they kind of, when I said non-discretionary accounts, it was our wage contingency account where they're preparing for an increase this year. So the accounts that we had talked about were employee benefits could not be touched. So can't touch employee benefits. We can't touch utilities. Utilities is a fixed cost. We can't touch debt service. Debt service is fixed cost. There was one other account that came up that we said, what was it, Bob? There were 4 accounts that we identified that could not be touched.
I just wanted, I understand what Melanie's asking though, what she's saying is that
here we are cherry picking whatever, the accounts that we're gonna shave off, we don't have line item or anything with theirs, so if you say 0.25%, they have to,
It's $109,000 for the
Right.
education budget.
On top of the 200,000.
That was already taken.
So-
I'm very well aware, and I expect that I'm probably gonna get outvoted here, so I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Well,
But
I am
I'm just saying, I am sticking to my principles, and my principles are that I truly feel that this is where we should be at. I think we should get
And
a
then
5%.
just go Dr. Brooks.
Was it
There it
wages?
is, 116,000.
It's 116, 164.
163,68.
Plus the
Yeah.
200,000.
Plus the 200.
Do you,
Except if you
164.
excluded those
Hold-
accounts, you're
let's have
excluding.
one conversation.
I just
please.
didn't get an answer to my question.
I think
I
we
have-
got an answer. The
I
answer,
got
at least
three-
as to the
okay.
proposal.
Okay.
Is that it be to the.
The entire
450.
budget,
The bottom line.
not to the,
I have a
Here's the deal.
So I could amend my motion.
No, no,
Are
okay.
we in discussion or no?
yeah,
We need a second.
no, so
I
No,
said
it's-
you
we
said
did-
second.
Sorry, discussion. Go.
But wait, can,
Yeah.
Okay, but to make that motion, we need to make it clear what accounts you're not taking this out of. So I need a list of those.
Well, look, I want, well.
I know you said employee benefits, utilities, debt services, but you said there was a fourth.
We owe salaries.
so town insurance,
But
210.
is that what we're sticking with, is just four?
And I wanna just kinda get on the record.
So you have to split out
If we're gonna go down this path, I'm gonna vote with Brian and Cynthia. If we're gonna go down this path, I think this is actually a first. I don't think we've ever had an increase at the same time as two big capital plans coming on board. I think we have the real unknown as to what the town will accept. We can give guidelines, we can kind of tell people what the impact is, but we don't know. And that's why I think the best path forward is to take our products from last night and put it to the public hearing and get input. If we don't, on 1 of 7, we don't want to go that route, right? I would vote, because we spent 5 hours last night and we found very little. So it's going to have to be, to get to a number, it's going to have to be fair, it's going to have to be pro rata across the board. So I'd be willing, if we want to go through that exercise tonight, I'm regretting not bringing coffee. So let's do it and go through it again by all those lines that we determine are not discretionary and cut it. I don't think that's the right way to go because we don't have input from the town. But if folks want to go that route tonight, let's do it, because that's the only way we're gonna get the percentage increase down to something that's less than 4.1.
Before,
Less than
before we
4.9.
go down there,
Less than 5%.
I mean, if you were to take a 1/4% off the total town budget the way it is right now, you're looking at $65,000. And that includes all the accounts that, yes.
If you-
That's right,
Mr.
because it was
Chairman?
145 when it was .005.
Mr. Chairman?
Hold on, please. What I understood Brian's.
It's more than that gets cut
116.
Right.
The Board of Ed would be
All correct.
116.
Right, so
So there's no value add.
So if we're having discussion on it, if we're actually gonna go down this path, then I think we need to hear from the board.
What's
that
the
what
dollar
kind
amount
of
that applies
cuts
to
that
Melanie's?
means are gonna happen.
No, we're gonna have to go through their work and come to the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, we have a different problem. I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't think we can get this done in time because this has to be published line by line in the newspaper, and it has to go into the newspaper within a couple days.
Well, that's why I'm saying, if we wanna go down this route, let's see if we can get coffee brought in, because we have to go through it
So
tonight.
what are you proposing? Are you asking us to vote on Brian's motion? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, as a concept, and I think we're gonna have to work through what are the 4 accounts that we can't touch. And Brian, I'm kinda interpreting.
This is, if there's 4 people that are against it, then we wait for the public hearing and we discuss it after that. I mean, if there's 4 people who are vehemently opposed to that discussion and you're gonna vote no to speak your conscience, and, we move on and we go to the public hearing and we see what the public says.
Right, I mean, put it to a makes sense, put it
You
to a
know,
vote before we.
I mean, if it's something that you guys really are opposed to, then I'll respect that, and let's move on. Let's not, you know, spend 2 hours on, you know, futility. If at the end of the day, you know, we're not interested in it, which is fine.
And I think there's merit to that proposal, but I think to a degree the ship has sailed. We had an opportunity yesterday, going through line by line, to say, okay, here's a guiding principle, we want to reduce everything by, you know, 1/4%, and that amounts to this dollar amount. Let's vote on it, and then go on to the next one. That ship has sailed.
We weren't using that as any sort of.
Exactly,
concept.
we did, and that's
We
why I said
didn't.
that the ship has sailed. We had that opportunity.
Except
Now-
nobody thought
now
of it
it's-
until towards the end, so it only came up as a concept towards the end.
Right.
And I don't feel comfortable feeling like that, oh, we gotta get this done, because, and I understand that we need to get it published, but that's not really a very, productive way to think about it, because then it puts us under the gun if there are some discussions that need to be had. So, I hear what you're saying, Matt, but, you know, it's
Well-
just like, we gotta get this published, so we gotta hurry
Well,
up.
okay,
yeah.
we're locked into dates by the charter,
I
so
understand that.
you can still do this after you have the public hearing, and you can have all the data at your fingertips. But I'm telling you, I don't think we can get this, split out those numbers, because you can't just apply this to the.
I will withdraw my motion with the caveat that I'm sure you're gonna hear it from me after the public hearing.
Well, I mean.
Duly
that's-
noted.
And I think that's appropriate. After,
I do too.
if this goes down, then I think that that's an appropriate approach to take.
Well,
But I think right now. it's-
Public hearing is gonna be input, so
Right.
we're gonna listen to input.
Right.
Now,
Right.
my personal feeling is people who care about the budget are gonna come out and lobby for what, you know, they want to lobby for, so we're gonna hear a lot of positives.
Mhm.
But take that with the fact that there's still an overwhelming majority of people who don't follow it, and are just gonna look at the number, and it's gonna be a decision to them whether or not it's a good budget. We feel it's a good budget, it's what they think is appropriate. So I will withdraw my motion, and I will wait for after the public hearing, and we'll take it up.
And you might have to listen to, like, I told you so.
No,
or-
there will be no I told you so. I will wait for the public hearing, and we'll talk about it after that.
I do just have a question for Terry Yansky, tying into Melanie's comment.
Yeah, we would need some clarity.
You know,
as
if
to,
we're going
Is it our
to-
bottom,
yeah.
is it our bottom line number?
I mean, if we're not
Or-
touching our,
Yeah, my
have
recommendation
to-
would be, as finance person to finance
Yes.
person, assume worst case and figure out what the ramifications are
It's $116,164
to the bottom line.
to the bottom line.
We would
But-
not try
okay.
to.
But it's inclusive of
Everything.
those things.
of many items
All we have.
that really are the same, that employee benefits.
And that's what I wanna know, that number. We already know the 116. What would be the
Well, I would
number
need to know which
that
accounts
compares?
you're
Okay. We
culling
said
out from the town.
Debt service, which you don't have
I
debt
don't have debt
service,
service.
okay? Utilities, you don't have utilities, cause we have utilities.
No, I have diesel fuel.
Okay, that, you know,
Gotta
so
run our buses.
compare
I have to fill the
apples
buses
to
every day.
apples.
Yeah, and I did lock in at $2.20 a gallon for all of next year for the
Okay.
diesel fuel.
Are those expenses though outside of 450?
Yeah, in the operating budget.
Yeah, they
Diesel
do the
fuel,
buses,
In,
yeah,
in the town out
yeah.
Can I
Here in our
can I just speak to my withdrawn motion?
You already withdrew
But I
it.
just want to say what my mindset was, so everyone.
there. That would be helpful.
My mindset was simple. Line 440, debt service, would be excluded from that. Line 390, employees' benefits, would be excluded from that. Line, hold on. There were 4 lines that I saw. Line 210, town insurance, would be excluded from that. And debt service would be excluded from that.
What was the, you
Yeah,
said
then
debt
you
service,
said
so what were the four?
Let me go through it again. We had identified 4 things that we couldn't cut.
Debt service.
It was intra-government, yeah, it was intra-government, we couldn't touch.
So debt service, employee benefits, town insurance, and intergovernment.
But it's
U-
classified
util-
salaries too.
Utilities.
Oh,
That's
utilities.
Utilities.
But it's negotiated salaries too, right?
That's not, we're not including those, that would be excluded.
What do you mean?
But she didn't say. but
I'm not
but-
excluding.
No, he's-
Listen, my point is this, I said if a budget's 850,000, right? The library budget came out to 800 and how much?
$899.
So what is 1/4% of 899? We're including her salaries in there, what's 1/4% of that? How much? Paul?
For $2,000.
So that would be their cut, $2,000. I kind of went over the thing. Now, in fairness, if you guys had utilities,
We have one utility,
right, I would be fine
and,
with that.
and we have, $8 million in employee benefits.
And I would be fine with it excluding that.
Okay.
I think that that would be fair.
A true apples to apples.
Right, and yeah,
Let's
employee
intergovernmental.
benefits, we can't touch employee benefits.
So what happens with the
Take our
negotiated
number.
salaries then, Dex?
We don't have any sort of line item with that, so that's why we're having this conversation.
Brian's saying he's willing to.
Have them take
Yeah,
that
they
out.
do whatever they do.
No, so
No, what I'm saying is this, with the Board of Ed, I would be willing to say that employee benefits should be excluded from the 1/4%, right?
Including salary?
No, because I'm including salary and all the other lines. The library's budget is 899,000, that's including salaries and everything. 1/4% cut for them would come out to roughly 2,000 something dollars.
Call it 2,500.
2,500 out of a $900,000 budget. So, in fairness to the Board of Ed, I would not say, you know, their employee benefits are fixed. We've made a commitment to our employees, you have to pay that. If you guys have insurance costs that I don't know about, you know,
No, we're with them.
but what I'm saying is, you know, if there's an insurance cost, you know, obviously, we're not gonna slant the table here. Whatever we're excluding from the town, and I never said we're excluding salaries from the town, I said employee benefits, we would exclude from the 1/4%. I said debt service, we would exclude from the 1/4%.
Yes.
You know, but salaries, you know, is all part of that 1/4%. I mean, if we did that, we're really not cutting anything.
Brian, with this additional refinement of being able to exclude those items from BOE, is 1/4% enough to make the change?
I don't know, we'd have to discuss it, we'll, after the public, like I said, I withdrawn my motion.
Right.
So.
I was just,
Right.
we're just talking high level here.
Hypothetically, my motion was because the start of our framework, the majority of the board, 5 members, thought 4.9 was the number that they wanted to work for. So I wanted to put forward a viable option to get us to as close to 4.9 as possible.
Under target.
Correct.
A real target.
So, based on the reaction, I'm willing to wait until after the public hearing, but my gut is telling me that I need to hear overwhelming support, and not just from.
So it's fungible, whether it's 0.25,
It could go anywhere.
0.30, or,
That's up to us.
or whatever, that's.
No debt service.
The idea would be, let's go back to the target or a renewed target and figure out a percentage to get there, or a methodology, maybe alternate methodology.
Right, and try not to go line by line, because like I said, the senior center is a $20,000 hit.
Yeah, I excluded some more than that.
I hear you, I hear you. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay, well, because there's only 2 departments, they have bottom line.
Right, so it will be a 1/4% off each line, is what it says.
Or find the, come up with a methodology, take the biggest.
How are you guys? If we say 1/4%, it
We
could go
can't even
to
say that
half.
though,
So
we have to
biggest
leave
line
it to
item.
them to do what, I'm confused because my understanding is that if you said a certain percentage, the Board of Ed, they would figure it out. We can't say, take it out of this line, take it out of that line. They have to apply it wherever, the same with the library, am I wrong?
But if you were trying to do an apples to apples, and you did the calculation removing our benefits, it would be $95,333 as a reduction and not $116,164. That would be the difference.
So it's really just sharing a philosophy, it's not anything that's based on, you know, any sort of directives or
No,
anything like that.
no,
we know
because at
what-
the end of the day, you would be making a dollar amount reduction to our bottom line.
A couple other points. You would also have to exclude probate court. We can't touch those. You'd have to exclude data processing, IT, because those are mostly licenses. And I would ask, if this is gonna come up after the public hearing, before you do this, you gotta fix senior center, because we can't take them down anymore. We gotta put something back. We can't reduce programs at the senior center.
Can I just put a comment on the record that isn't gonna help us with the budget? But I think it's really important. But I like your idea, Brian. I like your idea a lot. I just don't think it should be happening around this table. I think it should be happening in the department discussions about what budget they're gonna put forward to the Board of Selectmen, or to the Board of Finance. So I think next year, the conversation with the departments should be, the Board of Finance is looking for a 1 to 3% reduction in your budgets because there's more debt service coming online and we have more fixed costs to pay. So please, in your budgets, because you know your budgets best, find that 1 to 3% that you can cut and make that proposal so that we don't sit around this table not knowing the departments and deciding to do the whatever, 0.0025 or whatever it is, reduction, because we don't have the detail and the understanding of that department to do that.
But believe it or not.
You know, I need to address that, because we've just gone through 2.5 weeks of department hearings with the department heads. This is exactly where we start every year. And I need people to understand, when you have a department like Ann Skako's, you've got the contracted salaries, they're union negotiated. We can't change that. Postage, you can't change. The licensing fee for her software, you can't change. You know, we have an obligation to come forward to the Board of Finance with a realistic budget. If we start crafting budgets that are politically sellable, we're just gonna blow through
I
them.
don't think that's what Delene is saying, honestly.
I'm not gonna get into a debate about it. I just want you to know that we do this every year.
Well, you can't bring up a point and then say, I'm not gonna get into a
Yeah,
debate. She
I mean-
can
I'm-
respond.
So let me just say this.
Okay.
There are clearly some departments that won't be able to do that, right?
Yes.
Then they come and make the justification for why they can't do that. Like, and we're reasonable people, so we'll say, of course, you can't do that, we understand that. But there are some departments where that could be done, and they're the best people to make those distinctions and decisions. I don't think
Give
we
me an
are.
example
What?
of
And
a
so-
department
I
that
was
you
just-
think that can do that.
I could, but I can't get into it right now because it would take me a few minutes and it's not really where we are right now. My point is, as a town, we made some decisions to fund some things that are costing us a lot of money. So we can choose to do 5% increases every year, or we can do our best to try to tighten our belts, all of us, right? And come to the table with the best possible budget for the town, right? And so if you're saying that we did that,
Yes.
then that's great. But I feel like the discussion should be had at the department level to say, where can we reduce, where can we tighten our belts? Is there any way that we can bring
We
a lesser
have,
amount
I just want to
the
reassure
budget?
you, we have, that is the starting point every single year. Every year. We are always looking for efficiencies. We are, you know, it doesn't serve anybody to not be efficient. It does, you know, every department head I have would like to do more services, provide more services to the people who come into their offices. Every one of them. They're constrained by the budget. If they can find a way to do more with what they have, they do it every year. They already do that.
But then maybe, and I understand that the salaries are negotiated.
Yeah.
But I've only been on the board for 2 years. But in the 2 years that I've been on the board, you know, it's pretty much, there are increases across the board in salaries.
Just like with the Board of Ed, yes.
I
They're-
understand, but like, that has to be part of the negotiation, right?
Well, are you applying the same standard to the Board of Ed?
I'm just saying in general, like when the negotiations happen, like everybody needs to understand
They
that
mean, when
there's a
we
limited
negotiate
bucket.
salaries, we're not negotiating 3, 4, 5%. All right, we're doing it based on the average or the medium salaries increases that are out there. And it's on the low side, you know.
And so all I see is that there's a 3% increase for most of the salaries.
No.
3% was 3.
Okay,
No.
Please, I'm sorry.
Can
No,
we-
I want to correct the record on this because that's not correct. That's not
This is
correct.
Bob's meeting. He's
I
the chairman.
want to correct that. There are departments that had specific needs. Police put in 82,000 overtime for a reason. Health department moved up from part-time person to a full-time for that reason. So did building department. Those were new costs. If you back those out, the aggregate salary change is 1.9. It's not,
Okay,
I
and so
just
that-
want
I
people
don't
to know what the
see that,
facts.
right? I don't see that, I don't see that, right? So it's good to know that, but, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody, all I'm saying is, as a town, our job for the next couple of years is to pay the debt service that's going to be more and have the same level of services for the townspeople and not have
Exactly.
a dramatic jump in taxes.
Exactly.
So I just would like for those discussions, and apparently you have them, but to continue, you know, throughout the year, so that when the budget comes to the Board of Finance, we're not looking at a 5% increase, right? That we are concerned about being able to sell, that's got a ton of fixed costs in there that we have no control over, that we've cut a ton of stuff that we feel like is really important for the town, but we can't do it this year.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
agreed.
an impossible situation, so something has to be changed. We have to think about it. There has to be some new process for next year. That's the way I think of this.
But that only process,
Sorry, Brian. Sorry, that's simple.
I'm gonna bring up a point, and I'm gonna bring it up slowly, and just let me finish before someone jumps in. Okay? That's all I'm asking.
It's a heavy lift.
We talk about where we can save money, and look, I don't negotiate your contracts, not involved in it, that's your purview. Actually, I've always respected your position as CEO. But when I was looking at the budget, I saw some new expenses, like $20,000 for plowing the PD parking lot. I saw $10,000 for mowing the lawn at the PD parking lot. I saw $15,000 to clean the new police station. And I saw roughly $5,000 in fertilizer expenses for the new police station, which was almost an increase of $50,000 in new spending. Now, I don't expect our town to, we don't have employees to clean it. But I would think if I was looking at that budget and saying, well, maybe we only need to contract someone to do the sidewalks, and between Parks and Rec and the town, we can just plow the lot and have someone do the sidewalks. And it might be
Are you gonna give us a new head count?
Well, no, in my business, sometimes I don't get new head count, Matt.
Yeah, neither do I, so you have to contract it out. You can't not do the work.
If you're telling
let me tell you.
Okay,
Don't tell me anything. I work for Public Works.
Let's-
Have you ever worked for Public Works,
Please,
Matt?
Brian, please.
3 years I worked for it.
Brian, please, in fact.
Don't lecture me on work.
Let's settle it down, like this is a good.
It's always about head count, Sometimes we just gotta do more with less. I do it in my job all
No,
the time.
forget that. You can't do,
You can't do one parking lot to save $10,000. I'm not asking you to do the
No.
sidewalks.
No.
I don't believe that. I
okay,
don't
well,
believe
all
that.
right, this is where we are. We have a prejudice here.
There's no prejudice.
Yes, there is.
You're prejudiced against anything I say.
No.
It's always the end of the world. You're this, that. Before I even got in here yesterday, you're saying, I don't want to hear anything about bipartisan. When I was sincere when I said that. Okay?
Guys, this is totally not
But-
productive. This is
Right,
ridiculous.
because he won't
Please
listen
stop
to
and say
anyone's point of view
order.
but his own.
Point of order. This
No.
is silly.
No, I wanna put this on the record. We have already cut almost 500,000 out of the town side budget, and I'm hearing an assumption that we're not efficient, that we could do other things, that we could just make employees go here, employees go there. I hear this every year, and quite frankly, I'm tired of it.
Did you
I work
discuss-
in this
did you
office
discuss the
every,
$50,000
excuse me, I have the,
Did you
yes,
discuss
yes,
the 50 You
yes.
discussed that with the Board of Finance, that it was gonna be $50,000. What I heard it was gonna be nominal. And I'm not even upset that we have to take care of the place. All I'm saying is sometimes maybe there's just a way where we can save a little bit of money.
And we look for that every year.
Okay?
Don't accuse us.
No one accused you of anything.
By implication, yes, you
There
are.
was no implication, there was no accusation.
Yes, you
There was
are.
a suggestion.
Okay.
Okay, Cynthia, you're up.
Well, and maybe we could have avoided this, but because, I think that it sounded like from the beginning that you and Delene were not on the same page, and my.
No, we're not. I'm really not. We have to talk about
But
that.
the way it was communicated, because my memory is that that was going to be part of the process, was just to say a number, not to say, that you're not trying to reduce spending, but to say, we're targeting, 3%. Let's just say we're targeting that, and then to apply it. So there's nothing to get upset about. I think that's what we were talking about. And instead of having it be, we're trying to cut spending wherever we can,
We got it.
but this is what we're targeting for the budget, so that when you bring it to the Board of Finance, do you understand what I'm saying? It's not
I
even
understand what
heated.
you're saying,
Why are we
and
heated?
I would, well, let me say for the record, I would welcome having that conversation before we start this.
Exactly.
So we know what we're targeting. But I wanna ask you a
Exactly.
question. I wanna ask you a question.
Exactly.
Has anybody asked our Board of Ed colleagues, can you do with a few teachers?
Can you do what?
Can you do with a few less teachers?
No.
Are you expecting the same thing from them that this board is suggesting that I should do?
Matt, I think you misunderstood what I was saying. Here's my Pollyanna view of this. We're all on Team Bethel, right? And so from my perspective, when we've got increasing debt service and other fixed costs, and we feel like it's very hard to sell a certain percentage increase, I am just looking for a way for us to be able to do the things that we need to do to move the town forward at the same time that we meet our obligations, right? And we're a fair employer. So I don't know the answers for that, and I apologize if I made it sound like I did, because I don't. And I admire the job that you do. My point only is this. I think we need to look at this process after the budget this year. If we can be of help, I think we would love to. We did an after-action review last year after the budget. We came up with some items, and one of them was what Cynthia just mentioned. And so if we can help, I would be happy to help. My only thought is, having worked in private industry, every year departments get a target, right, for what to reduce to. I mean, you just do, you worked in industry, right? And maybe it doesn't work exactly that way.
It doesn't.
In the municipalities, and I understand that. But just the notion that, we're under a lot of constraints. There aren't a lot of degrees of freedom. What are the things we can do so that next year we're not in this same situation? That is my only point.
Okay, I want to address that. I appreciate that explanation. I really do. Yes, I spent 34 years in the private sector. Private sector can do anything they want, anything. They're not constrained. When I had a division, when I had a product line that wasn't performing, I could shut it down. I could send people away. I could move manufacturing. You can't do that in the public sector. So we are locked in. And I want to state why I made the comment I did about, I feel, I'm gonna bare my soul a little bit here. I heard from both of you that you want my department heads to try harder to cut that. I did not hear the same thing being given to the Board of
Can I
Ed.
speak to that?
No, I'm
you
not
made a
done,
comment.
I'm not done.
Look,
I'm
you don't
hearing-
need to be Carmack to understand we're gonna come down this path. We're gonna do it though. So Matt, you have the floor,
I didn't
since the
even know.
door's been open.
Format.
Can we
Because
have
I heard
coffee
the
brought
same
in?
thing.
We'll be here for a while.
Well,
I heard what
This is what I was
Matt
trying to
heard.
avoid, but Matt, go.
Okay, what I'm saying is, I hear an underlying assumption that we could do more, that we're not trying hard enough, and I hear this all the time, and quite frankly, it really bothers me. Because my department heads come forward with first the things they can't change. And then they come forward just, like with Eileen Earl. We need to replace the playground equipment at Parloa because it's not safe. That's it. That's it. There is no place else to go with that. We have no ability like I had in the private sector, and you probably had in the private sector, and Cynthia, when you, wherever it was you worked, some time ago, you can't just say, yeah, this isn't working, we're just gonna wipe that out. Nobody in the public sector in any town has the control to do that. So I just want people to know that my department heads are diligent about this.
You know, Matt, I really appreciate that, and personally, I don't presume to know what you guys do, and I don't have the expertise to evaluate what you do. Honestly, I really don't. So I wouldn't presume to do that, and I apologize if that's what you guys heard. I think it's because they're your people, right? And it's an emotional reaction, and I get that. But my only point is, we have to do something different for next year. If we end up in this same situation, and you know what, I don't look at the Board of Ed as separate from the town budget. I know you guys all do, but I look at the taxes, right? That's what I'm looking at.
Mhm.
So I don't look at you guys separately from you. I just look at the amount of money that we're gonna be charging people, different from last year, and what it's gonna do to their pocketbooks and how they're gonna feel about what they're getting for their money. That's what I look at. So even though I'm looking at you, I'm not including you, right? I just think that as a process, we all need to say, what are the things we can do to make this better for next year? Because it's not gonna get easier, it's gonna get harder, right? That's what I'm hearing.
Let me say for the record, I appreciate that, and I did take it the other way because you were looking at me.
I'm sorry, I was just trying to make eye contact.
Okay, all right, I get that. But, so I would welcome an after-action review at some point. Maybe sometime over the summer, we can sit down and really workshop it. And I'm gonna tell you something, I'll just lay this out so we can talk about it when that comes. I think we need to change more than just the first part of the process, because most of the questions I heard last night should have been asked when all the department heads were here. And it's not, I'm not criticizing this board, because I've heard that for 10 years.
Yeah.
We go through a laborious process. We're here till 10 o'clock at night. The people prepare detailed presentations, and then the questions come out, and the lack of understanding is just astonishing. So I'm not blaming the people here. I'm saying there's something wrong with that process.
That's fair.
It was intended to give you information, and it's not working.
That's fair, and I would say this year, I felt a little bit less informed than last year when we had the binders, because this program, I think, is gonna be great. It
Mhm.
doesn't have as much detail as the binders
Yeah.
did last year. So-
I agree.
So that might be part of the problem.
I agree.
That was part of the problem.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak to the point about the Board of Ed. I recall years that we have had asked the Board of Ed to sacrifice, and if I recall a big year, it was when we lost $800,000 roughly in ECS spending. No one looked to the town and said, you have to come up with it. I was on the Board of Finance. We looked at the Board of Education and said, what are you gonna do? And they did what they had to do. I recall years where they asked for 3 employees for things that were essential, and we brought them down to 1.5 and worked out a way to lessen the impact. My suggestion about plowing was nothing insidious, it was nothing rude, it wasn't anything, it's actually based on personal experience. I've worked for a municipality for 24 years, I've worked for Public Works, I plowed snow I plowed snow for 20-some odd years, so I made a simple suggestion. Maybe you split it, right? Because the real work at the PD is the sidewalks, and I know that from experience. That's heavy work, so you contract that out. My point is, if we can't make suggestions without you getting upset and telling me that I'm saying something that I never said, I've never questioned your authority, and I never say anything about you, Matt. I respect you, and I've actually stopped people from talking about things that are in your purview.
Okay.
My point is, if I can't make a suggestion, what's the point of being here?
Do me a favor then. I appreciate those comments. Make those suggestions when we have the department heads here so we can explain that. I know a lot, but I don't know everything. I can't counter every lack of information.
Okay. I
So-
will make a point of doing that, but we could agree that the Board of Ed has made sacrifices in the past. We don't just exclude them. My proposal actually hurts the Board of Ed more than it hurts anybody. They're gonna bear the brunt of that. Matt, the 0.25%, we're talking about 116,000.
I understand that. I know I'm starting to repeat myself.
That's fine.
But we're in places where I've got departments that have a statutory obligation to get
Understood.
work done within a certain period of time, and they are at the limit.
Okay.
I mean, every penny you take out is gonna give us It's just basically gonna push us over the top.
Point taken.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanna say, because this is something that I've actually talked about for many, many years, and that is unforeseen consequences of a major project.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that has to be baked into the cake, and it just never is, frankly. So we get the big police station, we have to communicate that next year, that's gonna mean, 24,000 square feet of mopping rather than like 10 square feet or whatever they had over there. And just stuff that's going, like just what he talked about, what Brian said. Those are all, they're not unforeseen if you try to see them, but they are to the taxpayer, because they don't necessarily protect, do you know what I'm saying?
I do,
So we
I
have
do.
to include that, because otherwise you get sandbagged, and there you've got 50 grand that you're like, what?
You're absolutely right. I'm just gonna go back to the point that Bob made a little while ago. If you back it, we're not talking about those things as being the budget breaker here, because if you back out the debt, we're at a 0.6%?
It's a point.
It's a half a point mill increase. We're talking about the debt. So yeah, we have to, if we can find ways to shave a few dollars here and a few dollars here, that's great. I'm all for that. We'll do it. You have my promise that we will continue to do this every year. But we're kind of arguing about the quarters and the seat cushion here, when the big thing is the big debt. That's what's driving this budget problem.
That's not what I'm talking about, though. I'm
No,
talking
no,
about, you know what
you're
I'm
talking
saying,
about
right? It's completely different.
accounting for future costs of the,
Exactly,
yes,
so when the
I get it.
proposals are coming in the
I
big
get it.
money van,
Yeah.
then you wanna know what's gonna be down the road.
And what I'm saying is that in any other year, if debt was level, those costs wouldn't even be considered significant. We would have brushed past those last night, would have been no big
Well,
deal.
I would agree
But
with that.
debt makes them significant this year. It makes everything significant. I get it.
And it's gonna be the same next year, right? So.
Yeah.
Doing more.
It's gonna be the same next year.
Mhm.
So that's why I think we just need to plan for that.
Well, okay, sitting here listening, the debt is gonna go up, eventually it's gonna go down. Town employees, police, and education employees, unclassified service employees, all provide a service. The service that a teacher provides is no different than the service the tax collector provides, or that the first selectman. They all have a role. They are all pieces of the pie that make the town,
Sure.
okay?
Oh, yeah.
They all deserve to be funded. All the salaries are negotiated. The negotiations take into consideration a lot of factors. There's a give and take on the salary increases, to the medical contributions and all that. That is not our role to do. So, once that's done, that's done. It's a fixed thing. So really what's left in each budget that's discretionary would be their office expense, dues in education, vehicles, the cost for a vehicle, those type of things. I've been involved with the process for so long. I do know that when each department meets with a controller, first selectman, they go through all that stuff. Now, that all being said, every year, the Board of Education tries to make strides. Improvements to education, enhancements to everything like that. At the same time, the town side, the library, we all have things that we'd like to offer too.
Sure.
And we're all a service-oriented business, I guess you'd call us a business. And just as the Board of Ed scrutinizes their budgets, the town departments scrutinize theirs. Our role, I see our role as not to, we may ask questions of it, but our role is to be mindful of the financing. Can the town of Bethel afford it? Not our personal beliefs that, salary increases shouldn't be automatic, or the employees aren't working hard enough. So we need to continue on our path, I believe, of looking for ways that we can save to reduce debt, to not increase our debt, which, you know, we'll go up, we'll go down. We're trying not to put more things on the credit card, but we still also have a responsibility to fund those things. I mean, we need police cars. Where do they come from? Are we supposed to take them out of negotiated salaries? Are we supposed to ask the tax collector's office to cut her budget so we can buy a police car?
But I don't think that's what I'm saying is, I wish that wasn't our decision. I wish that was the police chief's decision, right? I wish that happened there, not here, because I don't know. I don't have the good information to make that decision. That's my only point.
Well, then how do they, well,
If the target is a certain percentage, then that's at least something, it's a framework, but it's not us getting into their business, it's, you know, let's try to meet this percentage of increase only, and see what happens, you know, that's what I think you were saying,
And then,
right?
and they could come and say, you know what, we simply have to have 3 this year instead of 2. We tried to make one last another year. It's just not gonna happen, and we have to have that number of cruisers, right?
It gives more
And like,
structure.
then we know, okay, this is, you know, we don't have a choice, right? That becomes like a fixed cost, cause they said we have to do this. But it's his decision, her decision, you know, it's not our decision. You know
then
what
when
I'm
they
saying?
don't present their actual needs and wants, fixes, whatever, and something happens and it's an emergency situation, this board has turned around and said, oh my God, we didn't even know you needed that, you never mentioned it.
But they won't do that. I mean, they will.
How?
Because if you just say, if you're targeting, it's like, look, could you just try not to spend more than $10 this week, like say it's your kid or something, and he spends $11 because he really needed to have whatever. I mean, it's not that, they're gonna have, it's a structure that rather than saying, no, you just think what you need and what you want and don't conflate those, it's just another structure that I see could be very helpful, that's all.
And you know what, it's really, honestly, it's not gonna help us with this budget, so I'm almost sorry I brought it up, but I do think it was a good discussion, to be honest, I think. So maybe we just pick it up in the summer again and kind of try to like, you know, talk about our learnings from this year and figure out for next year, how do we move forward, you know?
I almost think that how the Board of Ed presents, these are our absolute fixed costs, this is our state mandated costs, this, you know, they lay it out that way. If our departments did that too, and then said, and then this item is the item that we think will cut, costs in the future, or, you know, provide better
Or it's the thing, we need to move our
services.
department forward and
Right.
provide this additional service, and yeah, I agree.
Then maybe they might get something.
Well, thank you for entertaining the conversation.
Thank you for the entertainment.
And for the record, let me say, I'm not in favor of cutting Board of Ed
Oh, no,
budgets
no,
either.
no,
I
I'm
just-
not either.
I didn't want you to think I was going that way. I just want to make the point that once, the smallest side of the budget, the one that carries all the fixed costs, can't carry the entire load.
Yeah, I get it.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Can I ask a question of the chair?
Yes.
One of the things that I think is going to be, and you've all talked about it, that is gonna be the most difficult in presenting all of this is really, what does this number make up, right? Is there an opportunity for creating, and forgive me if this was your intent and I just, with all of the barrage of information, I missed it. Is there a way that you can create a PowerPoint presentation and work on, here's the number, here's how this number is built, this is what these numbers, this is what this represents? Because one of the things, having been in business for years and having to bring some bad news to people, as I'm sure we all have, one of the things that makes it, the sugar on the medicine, is that when people can look at it and say, oh, okay, I understand now that for that debt that we're paying down, this is what I got. And it's kind of like my credit card bill. Yeah, I remember buying that from Amazon, now I gotta pay for it. And that's the whole thing. But also to set the expectation, because in my talking to other people about what was happening, I think a lot of the population is not necessarily aware of how this is going to increase over time. And you're right, we're gonna face this next year, and it's gonna be that much more difficult because it's gonna be an even bigger percentage of this. And forgive me for even speaking up, but I mean, I think that's the biggest hurdle that you all have. I think if people understand what it is, as everybody has sort of been saying, I think it makes it more understandable. Is everybody gonna agree? Probably not. But at least you've given it a really good effort and you started to set that tone. And I think that's your intention, but just as a marketeer kind of person, having that visual and building it is really the thing that I think is gonna set it, because people are used to seeing that kind of thing, and then it becomes, I may not like it, but at least I understand what it is, and it's of our own making.
My expectation would be that we would do exactly what we did last year in an attempt to do what you're suggesting. We would create a walk that would say, here's how we got from the fiscal year 19 budget to the fiscal year 20 budget, and here are the big drivers. And you do it in a way pictorially so folks understand the numbers and the kind of relative percentages. So two other key pieces to the budget would be the fund balance. We'd show a chart explaining the fund balance. We also show a chart explaining where the short-term debt lies. And to your point, just hopefully give enough information so that people can make informed decisions. I'm going to go back to where we started an hour and a half ago. I think this is a unique year. I don't think we've ever had a 5% or plus increase that was driven by the combination of previously approved investment in the community and ordinary or typical financing of goods and services. I'm a newcomer to the town. I've only been here 27 years, so maybe I'm missing a few preceding years, but I don't remember a year that was in any way similar to this. Right? There was the high school 10 years ago maybe, but nothing that really hit the budget like the 1-2 impact of the police station and schools. So my thought was to have an informed analysis. We will take in information from the public hearing. We may or may not, from that exercise, have to go through the budget line item by line item again. If it's not an overwhelming support of the budget, right? Because we know public meetings like the public hearing, like the town meeting, tend to be much more pro-budget than the referendum. An simple example, last year was the turf field. Tremendously supported in a meeting, failed miserably at referendum, all right? So, absent overwhelming support at the public hearing, we may have to come back and figure out a way of getting this budget down to a percentage that is acceptable. We can do that exercise now. Maybe we do or don't need it come the public hearing. I guess, it's 8 o'clock now, we can keep going, I don't mind. I'm not sure where you all are. Or we just say, we're gonna take in the data, a specifically relevant data point. How do the people of Bethel feel at the public hearing? Come back on the 20th, the day after, and decide what to do. So I'm gonna go back to where I think we started. If I was coaching like I did in the old days, I'd say something like, good talk, now let's move on. And again, I'll go back to the suggestion, we present this product to the public hearing and take in the information. The alternative is, that's a suggestion, the alternative is we bring some coffee in and we go start going through the data. Bob, you're gonna have to probably make that computer smoke a bunch of numbers, but we can do that.
Do you want to go around the table and say what we think, like we usually do?
Just a
'Cause I'm
simple
willing to
yes or
start.
no. Just a simple yes or no. Because if people want to do if people are okay with moving it to the public hearing, then it's a yes. If it's a no, we'll circle back for more discussion. But I think we've fully vetted everything else that we need to vet to make that simple yes no discussion. Decision.
So I personally feel like I don't know where to cut anything else until I know what the breakdown of that 5.216 spending is. So I don't have any additional to give tonight until we have the data for that. So I would vote that we should move this to the town meeting and see what happens.
Technically, just
Sorry,
public hearing.
public hearing.
Sure. Brian?
I withdrew my motion saying that I reserve the right to bring it back after. So I don't know what we're voting on. Is it just,
It's not a vote.
There's no
It's-
motion.
So we're just gonna say we'll go to public hearing and gather public input. Fine.
I just think that's the direction it's going. I mean, I can't, with a good conscience, vote for that much of an increase, and so, but that's not gonna make it not go to the public hearing.
This is not a vote, this is not
Well,
a
I know we're not
final vote.
voting now, but I'm just saying, I see where it's going, and, again, I don't know what more to cut, other than what Brian said about, shaving it off, so, that's all I have.
I look forward to hearing from our constituents and see what their thoughts are, so.
And my recommendation is to go forward with this budget, and I think we all agree that we need to make it as clear and evident what the budget consists of. We need to be creative, and we need to use whatever communication methods we can find in order to put the case forward and say, this is what we've come up with, and, this is what you need to consider.
I just have a question.
He said
Before we go to public hearing, if we have to fix the senior center, don't we owe it to the public before we go if our plan is to?
Look,
I'm just asking.
I know,
I mean.
I don't think we touch anything right now. We wait until we come back from public hearing and do everything. Because, again, we don't know, let's say, I think we wait until our post-public hearing.
I wouldn't even ordinarily endorse this, but the senior center and social services could cause a near riot. If you, what I'm saying? It's like, they cut this out. So I would actually vote to mitigate that if you intend to do that, lest the people storm the stage.
I think you're right, and I think it's probably a small change, right? It's not a big.
20,000.
It's a big process.
Just to put back in what.
Well-
Are you kidding? Do you know how long I've been doing this?
It will look unfair.
I've had people.
For sure.
It is unfair, and I don't want to do that.
Digging into the.
I don't only want to,
Oh, okay.
I think we do the whole thing. Like I said, I'm willing to stay here tonight and let's do the whole thing, or let's just go to public hearing.
Okay, we have one more person.
Lenny said yes.
I like
Maybe
what
said
you said.
ditto.
I like what you said.
Wait,
So,
Bob, are
yeah,
you
I'd say
saying
go to the
you don't
public
wanna make
hearing.
the change to the senior center?
No. Because I think we have to make every change. Because let's, for example,
That was an
say.
error.
Yeah, I thought that was.
It was, because when we looked at the spreadsheet last night, what was in OpenGov, it looked like this 20,000 was still funded in there for additional programs. That's why we took it out.
And
That
that's
was
what
an
Matt,
error.
Matt said, that, so it's like, took out double it.
Matt's concern is that by taking out the 20, it ends up going negative.
But if you can't, you got those.
Right, because they had already taken out a certain amount.
Yeah.
You didn't take out 20.
Yeah, Board of Selectmen did.
That's the only reason why that's singled out.
And it might not have been loaded, it might not have been loaded into OpenGov, but the Board of Selectmen had already reduced that by 20. So there was a 20 and a 20.
Bob,
We
is that
didn't
right?
have accurate data last year on that.
I don't think so, I'm sorry. But the senior center, they had a year-over-year difference of 16,597, but I don't see any cuts to by the Board of Selectmen.
We cut something. So, Bob, we'll get back to you on that.
Tremendous capacity to make completely useless information.
No, I don't want to do it tonight anymore. It doesn't matter.
Listen, you go, I think it's a step down the path. And if that's the I'm willing to do it. One step. All right, so.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, that's the old one.
This is hard on her. Make sure she gets it all somewhere else.
No, I agree with your direction on that anyway.
Does it look like, it's not true that open gov was correct.
Oh, it was.
So,
So 40,000 was not taken out of the senior center.
all right, so,
I've got an error in my spreadsheet somewhere, because it's negative, so I'll figure it out.
Well, I think
We
it is,
did
isn't it?
intend to
This
take
year we
that
went up
20
19,000.
out last night, so if that's the only 20 that was taken out, then that's accurate for what we voted on.
Yeah, it may be, but there's something else wrong there, because she had put in, basically just a salary increase, and then said, okay, there's 20,000 worth of programming that I want to do. And somehow, there's a piece that's missing, because the 20,000 went way past the salary and went negative on the account, so.
So
The
their
error is
account-
not your guys, it's over here someplace.
Their
on my
account
side.
right now is lower than their
Yes.
account, no, their account that we're proposing is lower than their account that they have right now.
Correct.
By
Yeah.
$3,400.
And that's not how it was presented to the Board of Selectmen some time ago, but I'll figure it out
All right,
before the public hearing.
I would make a motion
well, we,
to send to the public hearing, combined, well, or broken out, budget, proposed budget for fiscal year 2019 through 2020, no, 2020.
1920.
A combined budget that is broken into the three categories: town, debt, and Board of Ed, as we normally break out. Total of $78,546,116, and send that to the public hearing that we'll be setting shortly.
Discussion.
Senior center is zero.
I thought we didn't have to vote to send it to the public hearing.
you have to vote to send it to the public.
Right, he just said, because we weren't voting then, we were discussing.
raise
Now
I-
a motion's been made.
I just, and again, I'm just trying to be factually correct when I make my vote.
Plus a little bit of salary.
If I vote yes,
That was like for-
am I saying that I support the
It
budget?
couldn't have been because she was.
You supported Joe
total
Wayne
increase in
public
that
hearing
account
for further
was
discussion.
19,936.
Okay, this is, that's fine. That's fine, I'm ready to vote.
That we don't
So, yeah.
Dion, how are you doing with describing this?
Yeah,
You got
so just the motion that Wendy made.
it? Seconded by Claudia.
Yes.
And you know what the 78 consists of? Board of
Yes.
Ed is how much?
So it's 78,546,116. Board of Ed is 46,465,473. Town budget is 26,381,510. 460 account is 480,000, and debt service is 5,219,133.
And that's what I said. That was, that was my motion.
333?
133.
Mr. Chairman, is there a way you could send a group email with just those figures so we
Yeah,
have?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And Bob, you take those four numbers, it adds up to 78,546,116.
546,116. But I think you also have to make a motion on the town, debt service and 460 account in total, right? Because that goes on a referendum as one item.
No, for the,
No.
we're not doing the referendum yet.
Okay.
We're sending the budget, proposed budget for fiscal year
Okay, so then you would do it later on.
of 78 million, which consists of 26
four.
million something for the town,
Mhm.
46.
46, that's how,
At the town meeting.
yeah, the town meeting has to be,
Okay.
the
That's
college
nice.
difference,
So, yeah, it's just a vote to move it to public.
to the public hearing.
Do we have the date set? What is the date?
That's our
That's our next.
Next thing to do? All right, so in
So we need a vote on that motion. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
the. Nay.
Okay, passes 5-3. Next deliverable is to set the date. We need a motion with a recommendation of March 19th, 7 PM, Bethel Middle School
Auditorium.
auditorium.
I'd make that motion.
You said March 19th?
7 PM,
7th grade middle school.
Bethel Middle School auditorium.
Who seconded?
Robert seconded. Discussion.
Well, it's a different discussion.
Oh.
Maybe I'm, delusional, that could be. But don't we vote separately for the, on the Board of Ed and the town?
I believe
To
you
send
do,
For the-
I believe you
Yeah.
do to send it to.
The town.
Town.
meeting.
But not to the public hearing?
No.
Very good. Thank you,
So I
Karen.
refer to it as a movement for further discussion on last night's product.
September,
March
meeting,
19th.
April 1st.
Okay, and
Yes.
that's our charter required day.
Yeah,
Right,
it
whatever.
works with all the dates.
Super.
With the, like, the expectation that the town meeting will be on the 1st.
April 1st, correct.
That's for charter. That's like
Auspicious
charter.
day.
I know, but-
Wow.
So we had a motion, we had it seconded, any more discussion? All those in favor of holding the public hearing on March 19th at 7 PM at the Bethel Middle School Auditorium, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Did everybody voted?
Did you guys say aye or nay?
Oh, aye. Does the 19th work for me? 19th works for me?
Seeing that, I believe that concludes our agenda. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn?
So moved, or second, or.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Any more for the road?
You're telling her we adjourned?
No, that's what I should have done.
Everywhere.